Hello and welcome. My name is Zack Wenthe. I'm a CDP evangelist for Treasure Data, and I'm excited to have you guys join me today for our talk and our focus today on predictions for first party data. So this is an area where I spend a lot of time talking to customers and prospects and analysts, and I've taken all of these kind of notes and these feedback and these thoughts and kind of distilled them down into um, a series of things to at least just think about over the next 12 to 18 months. Now, I know what a lot of you may be thinking. Haven't we been talking about first party data for a long time? Yes. And in all reality, it's still one of those challenges for most organizations, as we'll find out. So hopefully, maybe some of these won't come as a surprise to you, which means you guys are on a good footing. But as you think about this from a global impact perspective, partners that you're working with, other brands that you're dealing with, vendors, all of these things could, hopefully just make you smarter and help build those relationships with either your customers, with your network, and whatever. So without further ado, let's dive in and take a look at our first one. And the reality is, I just said we've been talking about these for a long time, and we've been talking about first party for a long time, and even longer, probably the deprecation of third party cookies. But unfortunately, it's still going to catch brands off guard. There are still many brands that we deal with on the forefront, and many brands that we haven't even spoke with yet because they still don't know what they're going to do when third party cookies are deprecated. And so let's back up a little bit and let's talk about the landscape and where we are at today. The reality is we've entered a world where we have a varying landscape. So some of your browsers are already doing ad blocking, cookie blocking, third-party cookie blocking by default. Some of them are doing it as a feature flag, so you can turn that on if you want. Some have limited windows. But the biggest kind of player in the room is Google. Google has, with their Google Chrome browser, has the majority share of the browser space. And so they have still yet to come on board with blocking third-party cookies by default. And they said that'll happen in 2024. Now, originally it was supposed to happen already. They've made some changes. They've gotten feedback from developers, from the ad networks, from, probably internally, their resources around how are we going to still manage to monetize this. And so the reality that we're sitting at right now is that there isn't a single answer, which adds to the confusion, which adds to the complexity, which is why at the end of the day, the elimination of third-party cookies is going to confuse people. And it even starts with often the confusion of cookies. Remember, a first-party cookie is one that you as a brand set on your own properties. So this is things you're using for your own tracking purposes, for monitoring whether somebody's logged in before, whether they're a return visitor, first-time visitor, security controls. All of that is managed by you, set by you according to your domain. Whereas a third-party cookie is a third party setting a cookie on your domain on your behalf or with your permission. And so that might be most common and most talked about example, obviously, is ad trackers. So when a visitor lands on your website and visits another page, you're able to retarget them because that third party network knows that that is the same person across multiple websites, and it works with that network effect of creating an identifier across multiple individuals. Well, the reality of what we're going to see is a world where that tracking and that retargeting and that one-to-one connection is not going to be available anymore. At least not in the way it's currently available, which is gonna change how ads are managed, how ads are bought, what the ad networks are going to be able to offer you as far as product strategy is going to change, and it's going to catch people off guard. So if you do nothing, if you walk away from this presentation and Pay no attention to any of the other predictions. Start thinking about your first party data strategy, how you are collecting data, how you can break the dependencies on others, on those third party networks to find people for you so that you have more control and more ownership of your data going forward. And the reality of that is coupled with the second one, which is what I'm calling kind of the triple down on privacy, is going to put you in a position of differentiation. We're in a world where privacy is no longer a thing that's talked about in business circles or in IT cybersecurity teams and at specialized conferences. It is average conversation within the consumer lexicon. And we see this across the globe. And it's a variety of, there's a variety of different ways this has come out. Obviously, the big behemoth GDPR really kicked off this wave of giving consumers right to access their data and right to have insights and controls about how they manage that. But it opened up a lot of challenges around how do we manage consent? How do we manage, privacy controls at a granular or global level? We see it in the U.S. around challenges with, with multiple states having different variations of privacy. So if you're a international company, you don't have at least the benefit of GDPR is there was one standard. Now if you're dealing with customers who are in the U.S., you're dealing with it on a state by state basis. CCPA was the first one. All of the states have a variation in the works, and that's not the end of the story. So privacy, access rights, those all make good sense. But what we're also seeing is a product differentiation reality that is starting to come up. Apple uses privacy as a product differentiator. They're talking about this on their devices, and it should be no surprise. One of their biggest competitors globally is Google. And Google is one that is still yet not to adopt the third-party cookie and privacy, yet Apple Safari has. So there is definitely a rift in kind of corporate philosophy. And I believe if Google makes any kind of waffling activity between now and 2024 with some of the privacy, you're going to see Apple jump on it even more. And so consumers know that the information that they are given is valuable. Now, they're still willing to give it. Research shows over and over and over again, consumers want personalization. They want personalized experiences. They're frustrated when those don't exist. So it's not that they're afraid to give up the data. They just want transparency into how it's being used, what it's being used for, and have it be logical and realistic to the action at hand. So if I'm a consumer and I'm buying clothes online, it's very logical for you to need my shipping address because you're going to send me something. That's my home address. But if I'm downloading a white paper, you don't need that same shipping address. You don't need that physical address. So knowing what you're asking for and being conscious as a marketer, it's very common to want to collect as much data as you possibly can. And, it makes sense. But the reality is we need to focus on how much we are collecting, where we're collecting it, and what we're collecting it for. So if you want to take away from this privacy one, the reality is you need to know where data is coming and going from your organization. I always recommend the idea of a data dictionary. Focus on knowing all of the customer data that is flowing in and out, PII or not. So even non-identifiable attributes and values and behaviors still should be marked, cataloged, and shared across the organization because they're valuable to your organization. It's a valuable exercise beyond a privacy perspective. But having this data catalog also, or this data dictionary, also allows you to manage nimbly any changes that may come. In the US where I'm based, we see this becoming a political thing. I don't doubt that it's going to continue nationally and globally as well. TikTok becoming kind of a villain for politicians. The reality is, again, until we kind of figure out where we want to go and what we're willing to give up as consumers, what we want legislated, what we don't want legislated, we're going to continue to have these battles. So be prepared. Know where your data is, know what you're collecting. Don't collect it if you don't need it because it just adds headache. And go through and audit that data dictionary once in a while. Ask questions. Having a center of excellence or a team that looks at that is a great way of monitoring that data. So let's jump ahead. Now, the reality is, I just talked about doom and gloom, doom and gloom, doom and gloom, doom and gloom. But the bright side of that was consumers still want personalization. They're still willing to give up information. And as marketers for so long, we've spent so much time focusing on what we call implied behaviors, meaning if we click on this, or if, as a consumer clicks on this, then does that, then we can assume that they're interested in, X, Y, or Z. And so we make all these decisions and we need all these tools and tracking in place. The reality is beyond first party data, there's this idea of zero party data, which is explicit information that you ask a consumer for to improve the experience. We work with a direct to consumer business that is focused on the healthy eating space. Something simple as asking what their, do they have a preferential diet type, right? Are they keto? Are they paleo? Are they vegan? Are they vegetarian? You don't have to assume that. Just ask. People will give that information because it immediately improves their experience if you use the data to improve their experience. And so that's the double side to that coin, right? Is if you ask, give something in value. At the end of the day, data privacy is a value exchange. We figured that out as marketers, as business operators, I'll get your email, I'll give you a white paper. That kind of became status quo. Now we have the ability to collect a lot more data, a lot more information, store it in places like CDP to build better experiences throughout the customer journey. But to do that, we need to make sure that what we're asking for does tie to value and that we're transparent about that. So think through that. Think through places where you can improve an experience, where you're making guesstimates, where you're creating, personalization rules that are very assumptive, where maybe you simply could ask and build your personas less off of that demographic attribute or that behavioral attribute that is assumptive, and start focusing on more motivations of the users, things that are driving their behavior, and grouping them into that value cluster. So that's a great way to take advantage of data and be less reliant on third-party vendors to supply that information to you, which many of it's going to go away, get more expensive, or just be more convoluted as we move forward. Now, this one is an interesting one. So, what happens when third-party cookies go away? How are we going to advertise? How are we going to drive advertising? Well, one of the biggest proposals in the market is coming from Google. Obviously, they are a massive advertising organization and they have a huge amount of the browser share. So they're driving a lot of these conversations. And they're not the only ones. There's others with multiple ways of kind of thinking about all of this. But what we're really thinking about right now is the idea of contextual targeting, contextual information, using either that implicit behavior, that implied, those implied outcomes, or the explicit information from zero-party data, even better, to build a contextual profile of your individuals. And so that's going to happen one of two ways. As a third party, Google's going to do that in the browser. So what's going to happen is as you browse a website as a consumer, there are going to be contextual identifiers that are going to say, hey, you belong in this type of group. Give you an example. If you are navigating a sporting goods site and you are looking at camping gear and reading on camping articles and outdoors, you may be bucketed into a camping or outdoors group, a context, for, if you will. Next time you travel around the website and visit, rather than the advertising network saying, hey, I know you specifically as a consumer based on this ID, what'll happen is it will ask for the browser. It'll say, give me their context. Are they an indoor person or an outdoor person? Are they sporting goods, whatever. It'll ask for that information from the browser, and then it will use that information to personalize the ads um, based on that. So the contextual result will be not one-to-one. You'll be in a small group or in a group-based mode. And the reality is results show that is almost just as effective, if not completely as effective, in generating the ad results for similar performance, return on ad spend. We'll have to see how it plays out completely, because obviously early tests, are just that, they're tests. But the reality is focusing on a consumer's value, what they value, what they interest, what they care about is way more impactful than knowing them one-to-one. You don't necessarily have to, if you're focusing on an anonymous audience, know that their ad ID 1124 or 1128. It doesn't matter if you can identify what they value, what they're interested in, and then send them more of that and find more people like that. And so we're going back to a kind of a world where we started on the internet, where we would see, contextual advertising, around like-minded content, like-minded engagement. And that's not a bad thing. I think a lot of people think this is going to be a huge step back, and it's not. It's actually going to, I think, tone down some of the scary stuff that a lot of people start blocking cookies for. The immediate retargeting of advertising sometimes feels creepy. So I think, we're going to see this kind of pendulum work itself out, but understanding context of your users, focusing on what their motivations are. If you have not refreshed your personas recently, now is the time to do that. Go out and start talking to your consumers, start talking to your buyers, start talking to your people who are driving the buying decisions, whatever business, whatever brand you happen to be in, as you're watching today. Go out and talk to them and focus less on demographics, focus less on psychographics, focus more on what motivates them. What are their values? What are their emotional buying states tied to your brand? So if you are a travel company, focusing on what is the experience that a consumer, the different types of experiences that they want, right? Something as simple as an introvert versus an extrovert. Introverts like travel experiences that they like to see imagery that is calming, relaxing. They want to read a book on the beach, or they want to, have a quiet, intimate meal with their loved one. They don't want to see a party atmosphere. But now the extrovert absolutely does. They get energized by the fact that there's, a social activity. There's, so testing out those varying kind of emotional messages are going to be a great way to start to build tripwires into your data strategy, ways to collect this information, for an anonymous audience to build that context. Eventually, though, the goal is to take that anonymous audience, give them enough value that they're willing to say, hey, great, now I'll tell you who I am. Now you're dropping that first party cookie. Now you're identifying them and you're putting them in your database. You're putting them in your CDP. And now you can go and transport that to the different advertising networks and say, hey, go advertise to Zack. I want to find him. Go advertise to people like Zack. I want to find more like him. And that's how you'll navigate this next world, is you'll build contextual strategies based on value and motivation, and enough value built up and enough resonance, so that you can move them from that anonymous world to that known world, and collect the data yourself. Don't be reliant on a third party to do it for you. All right. So as we jump to the last one, I couldn't do a presentation in this day and age without probably talking to some degree about AI. I think there's a law as a marketer against that right now. Here's the thing. The average consumer still hasn't bought into AI. Some of them are scared. Some of them think doom and gloom. Some of them think Skynet. Some of them think, end of the world. Well, the reality is the value that AI provides for an enterprise, internally, operationally, efficiency, is amazing. And it's very exciting in the B2B world right now, or in just the enterprise business world right now, because I can, as a marketer, generate content faster than I ever could in the past. Even if it's not 100%, I can have a starting point. I can make multiple images, royalty-free images that I can use in social, in personalization. All of that is amazing. But what happens is, as we progress, as we get better, and in 6 months, this conversation, what I'm saying now, will be outdated. It'll be a very different conversation. But I believe the reality that will dominate the industries right now is going to be the idea of assistive AI for the consumer. Finding ways to make AI more assistive to the consumer experience. And so this will be what we always wanted Alexa or Siri or Hey Google or any of those others to be, right? Where not only are there really strong information gathering, tools, but now they can start to pull in through plugins or through integrations. Again, if you're a clothing brand, being able to feed your customer buying behavior into a large language model, what they bought, where they bought, what regions they bought that in, so that I can say, hey, if I'm taking a trip to Spain in July and I'm trying to buy a wardrobe, what should I buy? And the AI will not just do a search, based on some basic parameters, but the, multitude of parameters, upwards of hundreds of thousands and millions of parameters, including things like weather, time of year, the weather in Spain at that time, what it's predicted to be. It can look at what did customers in Spain buy before and what's highly, highly reviewed. It can look at what do you buy that you like so that it can make personalized recommendations. And it'll be able to tie all of this together. So you have multiple models that are basically feeding a end result to a consumer so that there is a more personalized interaction with your brand. And that's just one channel. The same thing can happen from a customer support perspective. I think one of the biggest value points, for contact centers and for call centers and customer support will be able to have these language models for the agent so that the agent can do a quick parameter search for the same thing and make a recommendation where they can say, hey, based on the fact that you really love this purse, you might consider, and it's not just a predictive score, but it can take other parameters into account that just today we're not counting as an industry, not even treasure data. Everybody is just not looking at, things like, weather and time of day and year and cost and, any of these other parameters that you can feed into. Because think about it this way. A Google search is a sentence, right? Most consumers, when they're on your website using some third-party search tool, they're typing in 10 words. Whereas a contextual large language model can look at, 3,000 characters, 3,000 words. So it's a conversation now as opposed to a sentence. And that context can drive a lot. I used it recently. I took a trip just to play around. And I asked, OpenAI, I was traveling alone. I was speaking at a conference. I said, hey, can you find me 3 or 4 good restaurants nearby my hotel that are good, that have some availability, that are good restaurants that are good for a single person to eat at. And it went out, it did a search. It gave me back all of their reviews. 3 stars, 4 stars is what they offer. And it also pulled back open table reservation lists of here's what's available on the day that you want to go. And I was able to, without even searching 5 different places, right? I didn't have to go to Yelp and find a restaurant and then go to OpenTable and find a reservation and then see how far it is from my hotel and a map. All that happened in one interaction. And I was able to then use that to click on the link, the OpenTable link right there and book my dinner. And now imagine that with all your data, as we become, able to tie in safely and securely, third-party data into these models. It's going to be exciting. So that's one just to look out for. It's going to be interesting, and it's going to be definitely a big driver. But the reality is none of these work, and none of this works if you don't have all of your data in one location, right? So AI is based on having access to good data, good information. Having a first-party data strategy is important. but only if you can bring it all together and use it meaningfully. And that's where treasure data and that's where CDP comes in, right? We take customer data across all your different systems, all of these fragments of the individual, and tie them together to create that one profile, that AI powered profile across sales, services, marketing, operations, all of that information, and then push it out to unlock those customer experiences. Whether it's loyalty, whether it's personalization, whether it's better activation, and through both powering journeys or AI, we're able to do both predictive behavioring and personalization across your entire network. So the reality is you have to have a foundation. All of this is important. All this stuff is stuff I hope many of you are already, working on or thinking about or, are focusing on. But if you have not thought about how you're going to manage your third-party data strategy when those cookies go away and translate that and move that to a first-party data strategy, then you need to be talking to a CDP vendor. You need to be reaching out. Hopefully, you'll come and talk to Treasure Data. I'd love to connect with any of you who are watching this. But start thinking about what that strategy is going to look like and what that reality is. And so, again, I'm Zack Wenthe. I am the CDP evangelist for Treasure Data. This is a link directly to my LinkedIn if you'd like to connect or have a conversation, or if you have any questions about this topic or anything I touched on, or you want to go deeper. I welcome you to join me in a LinkedIn message, and we can continue this conversation, and go on from there. But again, thank you for your time. Hopefully this was interesting and valuable. And again, don't wait. Don't be surprised. Don't be the ones holding the bag when the cookies are gone. You want to be the ones leading the way and having everybody go, wow, I should have listened to you first. Be the leader. Thank you and have a great day.